Bihari. Govinda Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Ita Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol 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 Hari Bol. First of all, I offer my biryas of obeisances to lotus feet of Asmadi Guru Pad Padma. Inkala Brahtadat Guru Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Then offer obeisances at the lotus feet of Tirandi Sannyasi, Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Dandi Maharaj, Namnishta Santa Shri Aniruddhas Prabhuji. All the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis are gathered here. Please accept my humble obeisances. Today we are discussing Jaiva Dharma. I come to the new place, Hosur. This place is actually a temple established by Sripad Bhaktivedanta Dandi Maharaj. And in this place, I'll be staying for next some days, and also sometimes visit Tirupati also. The Navadvip Parikrama is also coming. So this is actually very nice season. The Hosur weather is little cool compared to Tirupati, and generally it's nearby Bangalore. It is only 45 minutes by bus to Bangalore, where Sripad Dandi Maharaj lives. But this is a different state. This is like Tamil Nadu, and Bangalore is in Karnataka. So let's read Jaiva Dharma. In the bodies of many of the Vaishnavas, we have seen the external manifestations of ecstasy, such as torrents of tears and hairs standing on end. While weeping, some called out fervently, O Gaur Kishore, when will you grant me a vision of your eternal pastimes in Navadvip? There were many groups of Vaishnavas who sang Shrinam with the accompaniment of mridanga and other instruments as they walked. The women of Kulia, who were also bhaktas of Sri Gauranga, became astonished to see the spiritual emotions and praised the spiritual good fortune of the Vaishnavas. So basically, we see the good fortune of a person based on how many ornaments he is wearing. But we don't as much give the importance to these type of ornaments, spiritual ornaments. We must try to give respect to these ornaments. These are the ecstatic symptoms. Over and away through discolorment of the body, trembling of the body. We should try to also understand tears in the eyes. So proceeding in this way, the Vaishnavas arrived at the Natya Mandir, dancing mandir, directly adjacent to the deity's altar. So basically in India, the temple is seen, there is a Natya Mandira, and there is means there is a hall where the congregation will sing the vajanas, the harikatha will be held, and there is also the deity's altar. Generally, you see, like if you go to Srila Bhaktivedanta Madhav Goswami Maharaj, Gaudiya Math, Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, they follow this particular style. In Devanand Gaudiya Math also, the altar is different and Natya Mandir is little separate. And in between, there is a passage where you can do the circumambulation of the altar. So this is a Bengali style of building temples. So this was where Sriman Mahaprabhu would dance and perform Sankirtan. The merchant who was sponsoring the festival greeted all of them. As a symbol of submission, he wore cloth around his neck and he fell at the Vaishnava's feet, expressing sentiments of great humility. Now, humility itself is an ornament. Galavastra Krutanjali Vaishnava Nikate. Galavastra Krutanjali Vaishnava Nikate. We should try to decorate. Generally, in Gaudiya Math, like you see, brahmacharis in ISKCON maybe sometimes don't wear a cloth around their neck. But brahmachari in Gaudiya Math, you'll see Prevan Prabhu and all brahmacharis, they always put a cloth around their neck. They are never without a cloth. Sannyasi always has a cloth around his neck for begging. Uttariya. So like that. And um, sometimes they hold dry straw also between their teeth. showing their great humility. Um, when all the Vaishnavas were seated in the Natya Mandir, the temple Sevites brought prasadam, flower garlands, and placed them around their necks. Mm. The poetic shlokas of Sri Chaitanya Mangal were then melodiously chanted. And upon hearing the ambrosial lila of Sri Chaitanya Dev, these Vaishnavas began to manifest various types of sattvika bhavas. So generally, when we hear the Harikatha of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then ecstatic symptoms manifest. Sattvika bhavas means ecstatic symptoms manifest. While they were thus absorbed in Premananda, the doorkeeper entered and addressed the authorities of the temple. The chief mullah of Sat Saika Pargana is sitting outside the assembly hall with associates and followers. He requests to have a discussion with some of the Vaishnava Pandits. Now, here is a leader of the Muslim community. Yeah, mullah actually means a Muslim cleric, Muslim priest. It's called mullah. Mullah, Maulana. These are actually different titles the Muslims use. Mullah or Maulana. Um, um, so mullah means the same as Maulavi and Maulana, but it is used in derogatory way. That is what they say like this. But generally Maulana, they say that. Maulavi say. But mullah is also commonly they use this title actually. Um, so someone who's knowledgeable in the Islamic scripture is called Maulana. Like especially the Holy Quran. He wanted to have discussion now. This Muslim scholar wants to have discussion with Vaishnava scholars. The temple authorities in turn informed the exalted Pandit Babajis that Mullah had arrived and desired to speak with them. As soon as the Vaishnavas received this news, due to a break in the flow of transcendental rasa, the mood of the assembly became overcast with dejection. Krishna's Babaji Mahashaya of Sri Madhyadeep inquired from the temple authorities, what is the Mullah Sahib's intention? Knowing the Mullah's purpose, they replied, the Mullah Sahib wants to discuss some spiritual matters with the Vaishnava Pandits. Now, suddenly some Muslim scholar will come to your door to a temple, you'll be surprised. So they added that the Mullah was the foremost among Muslim scholars and was highly respected by the Emperor of Delhi. So basically, India was ruled from Delhi. India was ruled from Delhi, and you'll see that there was a great king, Akbar. And he started actually his own religion, Dine Ilahi or something. Akbar and they were called Mughal rulers of India. So India was actually being ruled from Delhi. So that's why they were considered for example, the best known members of the Mughal dynasty are its first emperors. First one was Babur and five of his lineal descendants. So Babur's son was Humayun. And Humayun's son was actually Akbar. Then Akbar's son was Jahangir. Jahangir's son was Shah Jahan. And then his son was Aurangzeb. And Shah Jahan who is the build in the memory of his dear wife, Mumtaz Begum. He built actually Taj Mahal. And many people actually say that it's Tejo Mahal. It was a temple of Hindus and they converted it to the tomb like this. They say like this, but I don't know. We have to do some research about it. But it's a hot topic and I wouldn't worry about it because to claim the Hindu ancestry to the Muslim monument will be a big problem in India. So anyways, although always devoted to the promotion of his own religion, he was not in the least inimical or belligerent toward other religions. And that is what we should also be. Okay, we are following Vaishnava Dharma, but we should not hate other religions. We should think that, all right, let them follow their religion. I will follow what my Gurudev said. So I will be happily following what my. So here, this word is actually not so much I'm familiar. Belligerent. Belligerent. He was not in the least inimical or belligerent. It is translated in, it is pronounced belligerent. Actually, it means unfriendly and aggressive. So he was not unfriendly and aggressive to other religions. You can say like this. It's simple English. Um, Generally, belligerent is used for a country who's very much uh, accustomed to fight a war. So the temple authorities humbly requested that one or two Vaishnava Pandits should come forward and discuss the Shastra with him to display the preeminence of the sacred Vaishnava Dharma. Obviously, this particular Vaishnava religion is very eminent. Um, so it is important that some two, three scholars should come, professional scholars, and they should explain to this Muslim scholar, Maulana, that how Vaishnava Dharma is superior religion. So actually, preeminence. What is the preeminence means? The fact of surpassing all others. It means that Vaishnava Dharma far surpasses all other religions. It has a superiority. So, so some of the Vaishnavas felt inspired to speak with the Mullah Sahib, seeing an opportunity to propound Vaishnava Dharma. In the end, they decided amongst themselves that Gora Chand Das Pandit Babaji of Sri Mayapur, Vaishnava Das Pandit Babaji of Sri Godruma, Premananda Babaji of Jamnu Nagar, and Kali Pavandas Babaji of Champahatta should discourse with the Mullah Sahib. So basically, Gorachandas Pandit Babaji Maharaj of Sri Mayapur. Mayapur is actually the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Last time I also explained, this is one of the holiest places in India and not different from Gokul, Mayapur. So Mayapur is the Sachidananda Gaurahari appeared. Um, Actually, it is said that Mayapur is situated in an area somewhere in the middle of the rivers Hooghly, and Jalangyani is one of the main of the 9 islands of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is on the bank of the river Ganges, this holy place. And so many times I have had a good fortune of visiting Mayapur. I consider myself fortunate for that. Also Godruma, Godruma Dvipa, where Surabhi instructed Markandeya Rishi and told him to do Gauranga Bhajan, which is very easy and also doesn't have consideration for offenses. So Premdas Babaji of Jannu Nagar, Jannu Nagar. Jannu is actually was a great sage, and he drank the whole Ganga and released from his thigh. He didn't want to release the Ganga river from his mouth, so he released from his thigh, petting his thigh. So basically, he released the, or maybe from the ear. He released from his ear. That is what they say. So, because he could have released from the mouth, they say the mouth will contaminate the river, something like this. Anyways, Jannu became the father of Ganga river because he gave birth to Ganga. So, this Jannu and instructed the Vaishnava Dharma to his grandson, Vishnu. Vishnu is the son of Ganga Devi and Shantanu. So, so from Jannu Nagar, Sri Premdas Babaji came, and Kali Pavandas Babaji from Champahatta. Champahatta is actually the place where Champaklata Sakhi, she plucks flowers for service of Krishna. The champak flowers are very beautiful flowers. Generally speaking, you'll see that champak flower is actually very nice. Champak flowers are very, very nice. And these champak flowers apparently come like white flowers also there, some reddish tinge also they are there. But in Chapaklaka Sakhi, she plucks flowers actually. That is where she, our the author of Gita Govinda, Jayate Goswami used to reside. Also, it was the place of Dvijavaninath. Dvijavaninath was the younger brother of Gadadhar Pandit, has built Gaur Gadadhar temple. And Gaur Gadadhar is our worshipful deity. because Upasa Panchak. When you say Upasa Panchak, then what is Upasa Panchak? Is actually Gaur Gadadhar is also there. Radha Krishna is also there. And actually Gurudev is there. So generally when Gurudev's birthday is there, then um, we have to worship seven Panchakas. Upasa Panchak, Vyasa Panchak, Guru Panchak, like this. So Gaur Gadadhar, um, actually Gaur Gadadhar worship is very high. Generally, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, he told to them to worship Gaur Nitai, because Gaur Nitais are very, very merciful. Gaur Gadadhar worship is little high. So there is actually no difference between Radha Krishna and Gaur Gadadhar. Gaur Gadadhar and Radha Krishna are identical and have descended to teach the male of Sankirtan Rasa, Madhur Rasa. Through Chaitanya Leela, we can approach the lake of the sweetest nectar. Krishna Leela Amruta Sara, Tara Shata Shata Dhara, Dashadike Vahe Jata Haide, Shri Chaitanya Leela Haya, Sarovar Akshaya, Manohansa Chara Hatahate. The pastimes of Krishna are the quintessence of all divine nectar, and Chaitanya Leela is an inexhaustible lake of that nectar, which, flowing in hundreds of streams, floods the hearts of the devotees in all directions. Therefore, O nectar seeking friend, please let your mind swim in that lake like a regal swan. Um, Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written an arti for Gaur Gadadhar. We generally sing the Aarti of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kiba Jaya Jaya Gora Chande, Aarti ko Shobha. But also there is one more Aarti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Bhale Gora Gadadharir Aarti Nihari, Nadiya Purava Bhave Jau Bodhihari. As I hold the wondrous Aarti of my lords Gaur and Gadadhar, I enter into the mood of their existence previous to appearing in Nadia, their Vrindavan Leela as Shishi Radha Madhav. It is simply indescribable. So at his place of bhajan in Godrumadip, known as Swanan Sugat Gunja, Bhaktivinoda Thakur installed beautiful deities of Sri Gaur Gadadhar and composed these beautiful prayers. Ha ha mora Gaura Kishora Kabe daya kari Shri Godruma Bane Dekha dibe mana chora. O my most youthful Lord Gaura Kishore, when you will be merciful and show yourself to me, thus stilling my mind within the forest of Godruma. So, anyways, great Pandit from these different places, they wanted to discuss and should discourse with Mullah Sahib. All the other Vaishnavas could also go to witness the discussion when the recitation of Sri Chaitanya Mangal was completed. Hearing this decision, the four Babajis loudly exclaimed, Jai Nityananda, and followed the Mahanta into the large courtyard outside the temple. The Mullah and his company were seated in the courtyard under the pleasant and cooling shade of a large banyan tree. When they saw the Vaishnavas approaching, the Mullah and his party stood up cordially to receive them. Knowing all Jivas as servants of Krishna, the Vaishnavas in turn offered Dandavat to Sri Vasudev, situated in the heart of the Mullah and his associates, then took their respective seats. The setting was extraordinary to behold. On one side sat 50 well dressed Muslim scholars with white beards, with their majestic decorated stallions tethered behind them. On the other side, four Vaishnavas of divine appearance sat in a humble mood. With great anticipation, many Hindus came and sat behind them. Many others gathered there as well, taking seats nearby. Pandit Gorachan was the first to speak. He inquired, O great souls, why have you summoned such insignificant people as ourselves? Now see the humility of Vaishnavas. So Mullah Badruddin Sahib humbly replied, Salam, we desire to ask a few questions. Pandit Gorachan said, what knowledge might we have that can possibly answer your erudite questions? Badruddin Sahib came a little closer and said, Brothers, the Devas and Devis have been worshipped in Hindu society since ancient times. Now we see in our Quran Sharif that Allah is one and not two, and that He has no form. It is an offense to make an image of Him and worship it. I have a doubt about this issue and I have consulted many Brahman Skandits in the hope of resolving it. Actually, uh, he's telling that God is formless. God is formless. He's telling like this. So those Pandits replied that Allah is actually formless. However, one cannot possibly conceive that which has no form. Therefore, one should first make an imaginary form of Allah and meditate upon Him by worshipping that form. However, I am not satisfied with this answer because creating an imaginary form of Allah is a work of Satan. It is known as But and it is completely forbidden to worship it. Far from pleasing Allah, such worship only makes one subject to his punishment. We have heard that your original preceptor, Sri Chaitanya Dev, corrected all the faults in Hindu Dharma, yet his sampradaya also makes provision for worshipping material forms. We want to know why you Vaishnavas have not given up the worship of material forms, although you are expert in the decisions of the Shastra. So the Vaishnava Pandits were inwardly amused at Mullah's question. Outwardly they declared, Pandit, Gorachan Mahashay kindly give a suitable reply to the Mullah's question. Pandit Gorachan said graciously, as you order, and proceeded to answer the question. Gorachan, he who you refer to as Allah, we call Bhagavan. The Supreme Lord is one, but he is known by different names in the Quran, the Puranas, and in different countries and languages. The prime consideration is that the name which expresses all of the Supreme Lord's characteristics should be given prominence. For this reason, we have greater esteem for the name Bhagavan than the names Allah, Brahma, and Paramatma. The word Allah refers to that being who has no superior. But we do not consider that greatness or supremacy is the highest characteristic of the Lord. Rather, the characteristic which evokes the highest degree of wonder, chamatkarita, and sweetness, madhuri, is worthy of the utmost regard. Something that is exceedingly great inspires one type of wonder, but minuteness is a counterpart to greatness, and it inspires another type of wonder. Now, this is actually this is actually the thing. See, actually, the supercomputers. The supercomputers were there, and they were quite huge. There were many supercomputers were there. Um, uh, but you'll see that a small computer. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Right. Something that is exceedingly great inspires one type of wonder, but minuteness is a counterpart to greatness, and it inspires another type of wonder. Hence, Allah does not express the highest limit of wonder because it expresses greatness, but not minuteness. On the other hand, the word Bhagavan implies every type of wonder imaginable. The first characteristic of Bhagavan is complete Aishwarya opulence, which refers to the ultimate limit of greatness and minuteness. The second characteristic is that he is the most powerful because he possesses all Shaktis, Sarva Shaktimatta. That which is beyond the reach of human intellect is governed by Ishvara's Achintya Shakti, inconceivable potency, by which he simultaneously possesses form and is formless. If one thinks that Ishvara cannot have a form, one rejects his Achintya Shakti, by which Bhagwan manifests his eternal form and pastime before his bhaktas. Allah, Brahma, and Paramatma are Nirakar, formless, so they do not have any special wonderful characteristics. The third characteristic of the Lord is that he is always Mangalamaya, auspicious, and Yasha Purna, all famous. Therefore, his pastimes are full of nectar. His fourth characteristic is that he possesses all beauty, Saundarja, and all living beings who are endowed with transcendental vision see him as the most beautiful person. Bhagwan's fifth characteristic is that he has limitless knowledge, Ashesha Jnana. This means he is pure, complete, omniscient, and transcendental to mundane matter. His form is the very embodiment of consciousness and is beyond all material elements, Bhuta. His sixth characteristic is that even though he is the master and controller of all jivas, he is unattached, nirlepa, and independent, Swatantra. These are Bhagavan's six primary characteristics. Bhagavan has two manifestations. His feature of Aishwarya, majesty, and his feature of Madhurya, sweetness. His Madhurya manifestation is a supreme friend for the Jivas. And it is that personality known as Krishna or Chaitanya who is the Lord of our hearts. He has said that worshipping some imaginary form of the Lord is worship of material forms. Bhuta Parasta, Arabic, or Bhuta Puja, Sanskrit. And we also agree with that. The dharma of the Vaishnava is to worship the fully conscious eternal deity form of Bhagavan. Therefore, idolatry, Bhuta Parasta, is not part of the Vaishnava doctrine. One should clearly understand that the Vaishnava's worship of the deity is not idolatry. One cannot prohibit deity worship simply because some books forbid idolatry. Everything depends on the quality of faith in the worshipper's heart. The more one's heart can transcend the influence of matter, the more competent one will be to worship the pure form of the deity. You are the Mullah Sahib, the chief of Muslim scholars, and your heart may be free from the influence of matter. But what about those of your disciples who are not so learned? Are their hearts free from all thoughts of matter? The more one is absorbed in thoughts of matter, the more he will be implicated in the worship of matter. Although he may claim that the Lord is formless, his heart is still filled with thoughts of matter. It is very difficult for the general mass of people to worship the pure form of the deity, for such worship is strictly a matter of personal qualification. In other words, only one who has been elevated beyond the influence of matter can transcend thoughts of material form. I sincerely request you to consider this subject carefully. Mullah, I have considered your statement carefully. You say that Bhagavan refers to six astonishing attributes of the Supreme, and I have concluded that the Quran Sharif describes the same six qualities in relationship to the word Allah. There is no point arguing over the meaning of the word Allah. Allah is Bhagavan. Gurachan. Very good. If that is so, you must accept the beauty and opulence of the Supreme Being. It is then admitted that he possesses a splendid form in the spiritual world, which is distinct from the world of mundane matter. This is our divine deity form, Mullah. In our Quran, it is written that the Supreme Entity has a divine all conscious form, so we are compelled to accept this fact. However, any image of that spiritual form is material. That is what we call Bhut. The worship of Bhut is not the worship of the Supreme Being. Please tell me your viewpoint on this, Gorachan. In the Vaishnava Shastras, there is a provision for worshipping the divine spiritual deity form of Bhagwan. For the elevated class of devotees, no prescription has been given to worship material objects composed of earth, water, fire, or other elements. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 84th chapter, 13th verse. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke Swadhi Kalatradisu Bhauma Ijjati Yattirtha Buddhi Salilena Karichit Janeshu Avadneshu Saeva Gokhara. One who considers this corpse like body comprised of the three elements Vata, Pitta, and Kapha to be his real self, who regards his wife, children, and others as his very own self, and his very own, who considers mundane forms made of earth, stone, and wood to be worshipable, and who regards mere water to be a place of pilgrimage, but who does not consider the Bhagavad Bhaktas to be more dear than his very self, to be his very own, to be worshipable, and to be places of pilgrimage, such a person, though human, is not better than an ass among animals. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita 9.25, Bhutani yanti bhutecha. Those who worship matter go to the realms of matter. We see from these and many other conclusive statements that there is no basis in Shastra for the worship of dead matter. There is an important point to consider in this. Human beings have different degrees of qualification according to their knowledge and samskar. Only those who can understand pure spiritual existence are competent to worship the pure spiritual form of the deity. One's understanding is proportionate to one's development in this regard. Those whose spiritual qualification is extremely low cannot understand the pure spiritual state of existence. Even when such people meditate on the Lord within their minds, the form that they imagine is material. And meditating on a material form within the mind is the same as constructing a form of physical elements and regarding it as Lord as the Lord's form. And that is why it is beneficial for a person on this level of eligibility to worship the deity. Actually speaking, it will be most inauspicious for the general class of people if there were no worship of deities. When ordinary jivas become inclined toward the service of the Lord, they become despondent if they cannot see the deity form of the Lord before them. In religions where there is no worship of the deity, members who are on a low level of spiritual qualification are highly materialistic and oblivious to Ishvara or in a state of distraction. Therefore, worship of the deity is the foundation of religion for all humanity. The form of Parmeshwara is revealed to the Mahajanas through their trance of unalloyed Jnana Yoga, and they meditate on that pure transcendental form in their hearts, which are purified by bhakti. When the bhakta's heart is revealed to the world after his continuous meditation, the image of the Lord's transcendental form is fashioned in this mundane world. The divine form of the Lord, having been reflected in this way by the Mahajans, has become the form of the deity. The deity form is always chinmaya, spiritual, and conscious. For those who are on the highest platform of eligibility, those on the intermediate level see the deity as endowed with perception and awareness, manomaya. This means that the intermediate devotee has faith that a deity is conscious of his thoughts and prayers and accepts his mood of worship. However, the intermediate devotee, unlike the advanced devotee, does not directly perceive the deity as the spiritual, all conscious form of Bhagavan. Those who are on the lowest level initially see the deity as material, Jadamaya. But in time, the deity reveals his pure spiritual form to the to the intelligence purified by spiritual law. Consequently, the deity form of Bhagavan is suitable to be worshipped and served by all classes of devotees. It is unnecessary to worship an imaginary form, but it is highly beneficial to worship Bhagavan's eternal deity form. The Vaishnava Sampradayas give this provision for people on these three levels of eligibility to worship the deity. There is no fault in this, for it is the only arrangement by which the jivas can gradually attain auspiciousness. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yatha yathatma parimrajyeta so mat punya gatha shravana vidhani तथा तथा पश्यति वस्तु सूक्ष्मं चक्षुर्यथैवाञ्जन संप्रयुक्तम्. O Uddhava, as the eyes that are treated with therapeutic ointment can see very minute objects. Similarly, when the heart is cleaned, cleansed of material contamination by hearing and reciting the narrations of my supremely pure activities, it can see my subtle transcendental form, which is beyond the purview of matter. The Jivatma is covered by the material mind, and in this state he cannot know himself or render service to Paramatma. However, by performing sadhan bhakti, which consists of hearing, chanting, and other devotional practices, the Atma gradually develops spiritual power. As that power increases, material bondage slackens. But the more material bondage is relaxed, the more the soul's own natural function comes into ascendancy. Thus, one gradually attains direct perception of the self and Ishvara and engages directly in spiritual activities. Some people think that one should endeavor to realize the absolute truth by rejecting all that is not truth. This is known as the cultivation of dry knowledge. That power does a conditioned soul have to renounce objects? What power does a conditioned soul have to renounce objects that are not inherently real? Can a prisoner who is confined to a cell liberate himself simply by desiring to do so? His objective should be to eradicate the offense that has placed him in bondage. The Jivatma's principal defect is that he has forgotten that he is an eternal servant of Bhagavan, and that is why he is bound by Maya and forced to suffer material happiness, distress, and repeated birth and death in this world. Although a person may initially be busy in sense gratification, if for some reason or another his mind becomes a little inclined towards Ishvara and he regularly takes darshan of the deity and hears Hari Leela Katha, his original nature of being the eternal servant of Krishna will be strengthened. The more strength his the more strength this inherent nature develops, the more competent he becomes to pursue spirit directly. The only hope of spiritual progress for those who are the least spiritually qualified is to serve the deity and to hear and chant about the Lord. And that is why the Mahajanas have established service to the deity, Mullah. Isn't meditating on the form of the Lord within one's mind superior to imagining a form with the help of the material elements? Gorachan. They are one and the same. The mind follows matter, and whatever it thinks of is also material. We may say that Brahma is all pervading, but how can our minds actually conceive of this? We will be forced to think of it in terms of the all pervasiveness of the sky. How can the mind go beyond this consideration? Our conception of Brahma is therefore constrained by the limitation of material space. If one says, I am meditating on Brahma, the experience of Brahma will be limited by material time, for it fades when one's meditation is concluded. How can the mind's meditation grasp an object that is above matter when it is conditioned by time and space, which are material phenomena? One may reject the idea that the form of the deity can consist of material elements such as earth and water, and one can imagine that Ishvara is situated in the directions or space, but still, this is all Bhuta Puja, the worship of matter. No material object can support one's attainment of the transcendental goal. The only thing that facilitates this is the awakening of the inclination towards Ishvara. This inclination is inherent within the Jivatma and is gradually strengthened and converted into bhakti when one utters the name of God, recites his pastimes, and receives inspiration from beholding the deity, Shri Vigraha. The Lord's spiritual form can be experienced only by pure bhakti, not by jnana and karma. Mullah. Matter is distinct from God. I think that it is better not to worship material objects. But it is said that Satan introduced the worship of matter to keep the living entities bound in the material world. Goracha. Ishwar is one without a second, and he has no rival. Everything in this world is created by him and is under his control. Therefore, he can be satisfied by with any object when it is used in his worship. There is no object in this world one can worship that can arouse his
malice, for he is all auspicious. Even if a person such as Satan exists, he is no more than a special jiva under the control of God and has no power to do anything that is opposed to God's will. However, in my opinion, it is not possible for such a monstrous living entity to exist. No activity can take place that is contrary to the will of Ishvara, nor is any living entity independent of the Lord. You may ask, what is the origin of sin? My answer is as follows. Vidya, knowledge, is the understanding that the jivas are servants of Bhagwan, and avidya, ignorance, is forgetfulness of this. All jivas who, for whatever reason, take shelter of avidya, sow the seed of all sins in their hearts. In the hearts of those jivas who are eternal associates of Bhagwan, there is no seed of sin. One should understand this truth of avidya carefully. Instead of imagining an extraordinary myth about Satan, it means that it is not an offense to worship the Lord in material elements. Worship of the deity is most essential for those of low spiritual eligibility, and it is particularly auspicious for people of high spiritual eligibility. In our opinion, it is mere dogma to think that the worship of the deity is not good. There is no logical evidence from Shastra to support this position. Mullah. The inclination of the inclination towards God cannot be stimulated by worship of the deity because the mind of one who performs such worship always remains confined to the properties of matter. Gurachan, we can understand the defect in your theory by studying the ancient historical accounts of those who became great devotees. Many people began to worship the deity while they were neophytes. But their devotional mood developed through the association of pure devotees. Their realization of the transcendental and conscious nature of the deity also increased, and eventually they became immersed in the ocean of prema. The irrevocable conclusion is that satsanga is the root of all spiritual advancement. When one associates with bhaktas of Bhagavan, who are fully situated in divine consciousness, one awakens transcendental affection toward Bhagavan. The more this transcendental affection increases, the more the material idea of the deity vanishes, and through great good fortune, this divine consciousness gradually unfolds. In contrast, the advocates of non-Aryan religions generally oppose deity worship. But just consider how many of them have attained spiritual realization, Chinmay Bhav. They waste their time in useless arguments and malice. When have they experienced true devotion to Bhagwan? Mullah. There is no fault if one performs internal bhajan of God in a mood of love and externally engages in the worship of the deity. However, how can it be worship of God to worship a dog, a cat, a serpent, or a debauchee? Our revered prophet, Paigambar Sahib, has vehemently condemned such worship of material objects. Goracha. All human beings are grateful to God, no matter how many sins they commit. Occasionally, they become aware that God is the supreme entity, and when they are endowed with this belief, they bow down before the extraordinary things of this world. When ignorant people are inspired by their gratitude to God, they naturally offer respect to the sun, a river, a mountain, and to enormous animals. They express their hearts before such things and display submission to them. Granted, there is a vast difference between this type of worship of material objects and transcendent affection towards the Lord, Chinmay Bhagavad Bhakti. Still, when such ignorant people adopt a mood of gratitude to God and reverence towards material objects, it gradually produces a positive effect. Therefore, if one examines the situation logically, one cannot ascribe any fault to them. Meditation on the formless, all pervading feature of the Lord and offering namaz or other types of prayers to an impersonal aspect of the Lord are also devoid of pure transcendent love. So, how are these methods any different from the worship of a cat? For example, we consider that it is essential to arouse bhava towards Bhagwan by any means possible. The door leading to gradual elevation is firmly shut if people on this level of worship are ridiculed or condemned. Those who fall under the spell of dogmatism, therefore, and thereby become sectarian, lack the qualities of generosity and beneficence. That is why they ridicule and condemn others who do not worship in the same way as they do. This is a great mistake on their part, Mullah. Then must we conclude that everything is God, and that to worship anything at all is worship of God? That would mean that worship of sinful objects or the sinful tendencies also worship of God. Do all these different types of worship please God? Goracha. We do not say that everything is God. On the contrary, God is distinct from all these things. God creates and controls everything, and everything has a relationship with Him. The thread of that relationship runs through everything, and that is why one may inquire about the presence of God in all things. As one inquires into the presence of God in all things, one can gradually test or experience the supreme transcendental conscious entity. This is expressed in the sutra. Jigyasa Asvadanavadhi, inquiry leads to experience. You are all learned Panditas. If you kindly consider this matter in a generous mood, you will understand we Vaishnavas are completely disinterested in material things, and we do not want to enter into long drawn out arguments. If you kindly permit us, we shall now go to hear the sublime musical narration of Sri Chaitanya Mangal. It was not evident what conclusion the Mullah Sahib reached as a result of this discussion. After a short silence, he said, I have been pleased to hear your point of view. On another day, I will return and inquire further. Now it is late and I wish to return home. He and his party then mounted their horses and departed to Sat Saika Pargana. The Babaji loudly uttered the name of Sri Hari with great delight and entered the temple to hear the recitation of Sri Chaitanya Mangal. Thus ends the 11th chapter of Jaiva Dharma entitled Nitya Dharma and Idolatry. So Nitya Dharma and chapter 12, Nitya Dharma and Sadhana. So basically, you are seeing here that Muslims actually broke many deities of Hindus. The fanatic Muslims, not all Muslims, I would say. And you'll see that many temples were destroyed by fanatic Muslims. So, but this actually answers that we are not idolaters. We are not worshipping idols. We are worshipping the deity of Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna accepts the worship through this deity form. So that's why this particular chapter explains. And there is also conception of Satan. But Satan is actually no separate entity. He's not actually someone who's equal to God. God, there is no equal to him actually, to God. So we should know all these things. Very, very actually, this important discussion is going on here. So we conclude this now. Next time we'll begin chapter 12. Govinda Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai Govinda Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai Govinda Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jai Jai Govinda Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada has said that chanting Shri Harinam and direct realization of Bhagavan are one and the same. Means when you are chanting the holy name of Krishna, you are having the direct realization of Bhagavan. Those who engage in Pancha Mishal or Pancha Dev Upasana, a worship of five demigods, cannot serve Bhagavan. So in India, the impersonalists imagine the various demigods to be forms of the Lord. For example, Mayavadis worship five demigods, Panchopasana or Panchadev Upasana. They do not actually believe in the form of the Lord, but for the sake of worship, they imagine some form to be God. And generally, they imagine a form of Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, the sun god, and Durga. This is called Panchopasana or Panchadev Upasana. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada has said that establishing a printing press to print devotional books and preaching the glories of the holy name by organizing Namahatta programs constitutes genuine service of Sri Mayapur, the birthplace of Sri Gaurari. Everyone should perform Hari Seva, devotional service of Lord Hari, together and with one purpose. Wherever Harikatha is being spoken is a holy place, Tirtha. We are not doers of good or bad deeds, nor are we scholarly or literate. Carrying the shoes of Hari's pure and honest devotees who are devoid of deceit as our duty, we are initiates into the mantra of Kirtaniya Sada Hari. Always chant the name of Lord Hari. Without criticizing the nature of others, one should correct oneself. This is my personal instruction. Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Sabha saying. So we'll conclude here. Vanchakalpataruvesya kripa sindhuvecha pratanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much for attending today's class. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So I'll give Jadwani now, unless someone has any questions. जय श्री शिव गुरु गौरांग गांधर्विका गिरिधारी श्री राधा विनोद बिहार जी की जय। जय नितला पृष्ठ जगत गुरु शिशु भक्तिदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज गुरुदेव की जय। राम विष्णु विष्णुपाद शिशु भक्तिदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नितला पृष्ठ विष्णुपाद शिशुमत भक्तिदांत त्रिविक्रम गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नितला पृष्ठ विष्णुपाद शिशुमत गुरुगोविंद गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। जय नितला पृष्ठ विष्णुपाद शिशुमत भक्तिदांत स्वामी महाराज की जय। आचार्य केशरी श्रीमद भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। सपरिकर जगत गुरु शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गौ श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपी गोवर्धन द्वार शिवनात्मक शिशु मंडल की जय। हरिनाम संकीर्तन की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। त्रिंडी स्वामी शिष्य भक्तिदान दंडी महाराज जी की जय। नामनिष्ठ संत श्री अनिरुद्धास प्रभु की जय। बठेर सेवक वृंद की जय। धामवासी भक्त वृंद की जय। समागत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि ओ। थैंक यू डिवोटीज। हरे कृष्ण। थैंक यू डिवोटीज। हरे कृष्ण। Hare Krishna. Yes, yes, Didi, I will take rest. Thank you. Hare Krishna.